Hey everyone, this is Sophia bringing you the first video in our series which we are going to call the For Science series. Each week we will take a look at part of the game in which is very technical or perhaps unknown to a lot of people and try and break it down so that we can find the true mechanics and the true behaviour behind everything. The topic this week we're going to be covering is ally protection, which is a topic that is quite hot in the community right now when we've seen a couple of videos. I want to do a big shout out first to ING, I think I've said his name correctly, who started developing work on this about a week or two ago. It may have been a bit longer than that, and has built a very good spreadsheet that analyzes damage you receive in the clan boss encounter. Also, I want to give a shout out to HD Senti, who's given me a bit of assistance with the math as the math king that he is. But this video is really not to repeat necessarily what they have covered. It will cover aspects of it, but to just add and expand, and also to take an in-depth analysis on how it actually works with evidence within the game. So we're going to get started on what we first understand about ally protection. So we know in the game description and FAQs that it's described as the caster champion taking 50% damage, or 25% if you're using the weaker direct damage, and it will be transferred to from the target champion to the caster champion. Self-inflicted HP burn or poison does not trigger this effect, and each champion will use its own defensive value for mitigating damage. That's quite abstract in terms of how it all works, as we will go through. So, what do we know about ally protection? As is everyone should be aware by now, protection damage is transferred as raw damage. So what do we mean by this? So raw damage is essentially the multiplier of the ability times with the primary stat of that champion's ability, whether it's HP, attack, or defense. It does not include buffs, books, masteries, any multiplication effects on those champions' abilities. Additionally, the damage is not reduced by any defense numbers, and also the damage is not reduced by any multiplication of defense effects such as blast proof or maybe a Duchess or Norog passive. The damage essentially is a very flat amount. This is how ally protection is calculated. There are some things to note about affinity. Weak affinity non-weak hits will always take 20% less damage, which in turn means the protector will also take 20% less damage. If it's a weak hit, it will be minus 30, and if they take a strong hit, it will be increased by 30%. So affinity does affect the protector. So a discovery that we made in the last week or so, following on from the work from ING, was we were trying to determine how critical hits were coded to the protector, and the results from ING and Senti's testing would seem to determine that there was some sort of multiplier. So I took the testing on and I worked with Senti, and what we determined, in fact, was actually the critical hits are coded to the damaged champion. However, the actual critical damage multiplier is based on the protector's critical damage, and this would apply in all scenarios. Now, this does make sense from a code perspective, as we know that the protected value is considered as self-damage, just like Hakorn's damage is self-damage. Therefore, because it's self-inflicted, but is therefore a critical hit self-inflicted, the critical damage is therefore increased. Whether this is a bug or an intended mechanic is left, we don't really know. However, it is 100% accurate, as we will show a little bit later when we run some tests. So what about multiple ally protection? Multiple ally protection does not stack. If you have champion A applying ally protection and champion B applying ally protection, B will become the primary protector. However, typically ally protectors have yet to protect themselves. It wouldn't make sense. Therefore, your champion 2 will protect champion 1. However, he will then take over the role for all the other champions. However, multiple guardian sets are additive and do affect the way that protection works. So we know guardian is very similar to ally protection. However, the way that it works is the position in the team affects how much guardian transfer takes place. So for example, a champion in position 1 in the leader position with a guardian set would take 100%. However, a second guardian champion in position 2 will take 90%, and this consistently goes all the way through to position 5. Damage reduction passives are multiplicative, stacking based on team order, which we will explain. This is a big discovery, the team order. So what do we mean by additive and multiplicative for people who are uncertain? So what we mean by multiplicative is additional effects are multiplied independently from themselves. So if I was to receive 1,000 damage and I wanted to reduce this by 3 Guardian sets, if Guardian was multiplicative, it would be 1,000 times 0.9 times 0.9 times 0.9, almost step by step, resulting in 729. However, additive are considered combined effects effectively. So I would take all 3 of my Guardian sets and therefore reduce the 1,000 by 70. So 30% reduction, and that would give me 700. So we see that additive can be more powerful than multiplicative as the way the nature of it calculates. So what do we mean by damage reduction? We know that the damage is transferred as raw. These are what the tests have told us. Damage reduction then is effectively done by the champion's own defense value. This applies to Ally Protect, Bulwark, and Selfless Defender, and Guardian, so any transferred damage. The formula to figure out what your percentage of damage reduction will be is effectively this formula. It applies in all scenarios. The defense value would be your champion's defense value. You could put this into Excel or any spreadsheet to work out how much you'll reduce. It is capped at 85%. And you will quickly realize that there is diminishing returns after a certain value of defense where it becomes virtually pointless to add it. A good sweet spot tends to be 4,200. Transferred damage, and this is important and it's been reported, cannot be increased by external multiplier effects such as Gathering Fury. Once the damage has been transferred, it is effectively no longer the enemy damage in your champion, it is your protector damage in the champion. Therefore, Gathering Fury as an additional multiplier is applied after the transfer is complete. Now, how does Bulwark and Selfless Defender work in this? So Bulwark and Selfless Defender are also like Ally Protection. They transfer as a raw damage value. However, what does differ is they never appear to critically hit your champion. They can never appear to do that. Therefore, a Bulwark will always hit 5% reduced by its own defense regardless. The important thing to note is Bulwark and Selfless Defender do not stack. Therefore, if you have 2 champions on the same team, then the decision that the game will make in terms of which champion becomes the protector is based on team order. So you're starting to see that there's a theme here that we've discovered that team order is very essential in terms of the way that the damage is programmed into the game. In a real world scenario, if I had a champion with Bulwark in position 1 and a champion in Bulwark with position 2, position 1 takes the Bulwark damage and positions 2 mastery is effectively wasted. And that would work if it was position 2 and position 3. Position 3 would not take the Bulwark. Now, Guardian sets is a relatively new mechanic in the game in terms of an artifact set, and it's very powerful. It behaves similarly to Ally Protect in the sense that it transfers 10% of the raw damage. This is what we read the skill. And it is increased by the Guardian champion's critical damage. So if you're going to use Guardian, you need to be mindful that if you get critically hit, they will increase their own damage if you have made them a damage dealer. As we mentioned before, Guardian amount reduces 10% per additional set, and it's based on the team order the Guardian is placed in. And Guardian is additive. So these are stuff we've discussed before. We'll be doing a follow-up video specifically looking at the behavior of multiple Guardian sets versus Stalwart probably in a couple of weeks' time, if not next week, as I think there is a lot of weird mathematical going-ons between Guardian, Bulwark, and Ally Protection that could effectively reduce or remove damage. So the final thing to discuss here is transfer damage versus damage reduction. So what do we mean by transfer damage? We're talking about skills that Asuga Warcaller or Tanix have on their kit. And that basically takes 5%, or in the case of Asuga, 30% of any critical hit and applies it to themselves. This will apply before any other transfer effects. So if you have both Ally Protection and Asuga Warcaller and you get critically hit, the 30% will be taken from the Ally Protection raw value before Ally Protection is calculated. And it's the same thing for Guardian. And it's important to note that there's a bit of a miswritten understanding in the way that it's described in the game. Transfer damage abilities don't reduce your damage. It's simply redistributing it to different champions. This is very different to champions such as Norog, Duchess, Geomancer, Venomage, who physically remove 15%. Transfer simply takes one from one person and moves it to the other, which has its own values. If you have a champion who has higher defensive numbers, you will want them taking more damage than a champion with lower defensive numbers. The discovery that I have found alongside my co-worker, my colleague in arms, Never, is that damage reduction passives, which we previously thought had no impact on ally protection, does have impact on ally protection based on the team order. So you've been hearing me talk about team order a lot, and team order seems to have very big impact in terms of how the ally protection and the transfer damage actually interacts. The first thing to note is there is zero impact on the champion receiving damage. So after all the ally protection methods have happened, if a champion is in position 1 or position 5 or position 4 and you have a champion such as Duchess on your team, they'll still reduce their own damage by 25%. The order is not important for that champion. However, the order is very important for the champions taking the damage in a form of ally protection, guardian or bulwark. The main principle: if damage reduction is in your team, in terms of a passive ability, that champion must be in the team order before the champion's receiving damage for it to reduce the amount your protector receives in damage. So what we mean by that is if Norog is in position 5, your protector will effectively be taking 15% more damage than they need to be taking. And we're going to run some game tests in a second to show how this actually has an impact in terms of numbers. Similarly, Guardian will have a similar impact where you can essentially determine whether the Guardian champion is going to take 100% of the 10% or half. So if the champion being damaged is after the Guardian, then the Guardian champion will receive 100% of the 10% allocated to that as part of the artifact set. However, if the champion receiving damage is before the Guardian, then 50% of the 10% is received by the Guardian and 50% is given to the protector. Guardian, therefore, is always calculated before ally protection if it is in position 1 and if it is after the damage taken champion. How is this beneficial? If your ally protector has 4200 defense and your Guardian champion has 3500 defense, then you can take 10% damage to your Guardian, but your Guardian will actually take more damage than if your ally protector took this. Essentially, 50% would be reduced further by the formula for damage reduction. So you can choose who takes the most damage. So we're going to go through a bit of a summary and then we're going to work on some numbers and actual in-game tests just to show that everything that I've covered in this video is not made up. There's actual evidence and you can test it and see the impact yourself. So, summary. Any team should only have one Selfless Defender and Bulwark. That's whether you're in Clan Boss, Dungeons or Arena. More Bulwark does not give you any benefits. You should 100% avoid critical damage on your Protect or champions. That includes Guardian and Ally Protect. Or alternatively bring a champion that has decreased crit rate, such as Clod, Beast Feeder, or Aox the Rememberer, although he does have a quirk in his mechanic that has to decrease turn meter. So it's not very useful in Clan Boss. Team order is incredibly important if you have effects that reduce damage, and you should take extra care to make sure they're in the right order. Damage reduction passives should be placed as early as possible in the team order. And you should also be aware of transfer damage in abilities. If that champion is not tanky, they will take more damage, especially if they're configured to be a nuker. So let's take a look in game and using some analysis to see whether or not everything that I have just said is actually factually correct and you believe me. I would like to say I appreciate some people are not fans of spreadsheets and numbers, so I've tried to give this a bit of a breakdown as possible. However, this series is designed to be quite technical in nature with fairly rudimentary conclusions at the end for everyone. So if you have no interest in seeing the actual tests, you just want to know the truth, we've timestamped all the videos to give you a bit of a breakdown. So our test took place on Doom Tower Floor 2 hard against the first wave. Now in that wave there's a bunch of Drakes and they have a fixed attack and a multiplier, and they will attack with their A1. So we're able to use the stages tool, data mining, to know how much raw damage we should be expecting. And we can therefore test our hypotheses that we've concluded in the first half of this video against these tests. So let's start with the first area. And what we're going to look at here is it correct that ally protection is raw damage or not? So I've plugged in my numbers into this formula here. So we know that the raw damage that a Drake will do to a single target is 32,836. This is essentially 8,209 attack multiplied by his A1 multiplier of 4. I've coded in my Visix defense number here of 4047, giving me a damage reduction of 79%. As ally protect transfers 50%, we should be able to take the raw damage and multiply it by 0.5, and the ally protector should be receiving 16,418. After damage reduction, we should therefore be seeing a consistency of 3403 every time a Drake attacks. So let's take a look, see if that works. So in the game now, I've got Visix and Bistofus set up. Let's see if these numbers match up with our math. So we'll just cycle through here and do some skills, put ally protection up. Now we're likely to get some strong hits. There we go, 3403. 3403. So we can safely say that's the thing. Now we just got a 6704 hit. So let's just go quickly back to our math now. So based on our hypothesis that suggested critical damage from the champion that was protecting would be the way that it increases damage, I've coded in our crit damage for Visix at 97%. Therefore, we take the final damage and multiply it by the crit damage of Visix, and we end up with 6703. This is 6704. It's probably a rounding issue, which means that the defense value of Visix is more likely 4047.5 or 0.6, depending on how it rounds. So effectively, we've just proven that raw damage is 100% transferred, and critical damage is applied based on the target's critical damage. Excellent. Now, let's take a look at the impact of Guardian with Ally Protect. So I've got my team set up here. Penitent is in a Guardian set, and Visix is in leader position. So as we mentioned before, if the damage champion is before the Guardian, Ally Protection will be coded before the Guardian is coded. Therefore, half of the Guardian damage is transferred to the Protector. So if we're looking at the math involved with this, we should be expecting still for the Protector to be taking 3403. However, we should now be expecting about 521 for Penitent. I've coded Penitent's defense number in here. Therefore, we can take a look. So we'll just run through some skills here, put up ally protection, and let's take a look. We are again still subject to critical. There we go. So 3403 and 521. And we should see if there's a critical hit, affinities having an impact, and a critical hit should also increase the Guardian damage. Now let's just make a rotation here and place the Guardian champion before the damage champion. So now in this instance, we're expecting Guardian to be calculated prior to ally protection. What this should mean is that instead of our ally protector taking 3,403, they should now take 3,062, and our Guardian champion will be taking 1,042. It's worth noting at this point, we haven't reduced damage, we're simply redistributing it to the different champions. In my instance, it would benefit me for Visix to be going first, the ally protection, as Visix has a higher defense reduction formula, whereas Penitent has less and more crit damage. Therefore, she's likely to take more overall damage than Visix. So let's just go and test to see if we're going to receive 3,062 on Visix and 1,042 on Penitent. Okay, so we'll just do an A1. Ally Protect, 1,042, 3,063. And again, both subject to crit, but you can see the numbers are consistently coming out. Even the critical numbers are consistently coming out. So that proves our hypothesis there, that Guardian is calculated prior to the calculation of Ally Protect based on team order. Does the Guardian come before or after the champion receiving damage? So the next test for us to check that we're still on point with all our hypotheses is the concept of Bulwark stacking and Selfless Defender. So I brought in Asuga and Morley. Both of them currently have Selfless Defender and both have Bulwark. So let's see if the concept of team order determines whether or not which champion gets the Bulwark damage, and just to confirm that again Bulwark doesn't stack. So we'll just run this again. Bisto should get targeted, and we'll just run some basic skills here. Great, so we're going to start seeing the damage. So as you can see, only Asuga is taking damage here. So let's change this up now and put Morley into position 1. And put Bisto into position 2. Asuga into position 2. And let's run it through again, just auto in the first hits. And let's see whether Asuga continues to take damage. Now Morley is taking over the responsibility. So Bulwark doesn't stack and the leader determines. Now let's just, for the sake of testing, just ensure that it's got no issue with leader, and what we will do is we'll put this order in place. So we'll put Bisto into the lead. So if our hypothesis is correct, we should expect Morley to be the champion that takes the damage as the Bulwark designated champion. And attack that. So we can see that Morley continues to receive damage. So that's team order for Bulwark and not stacking, proven that is accurate. So the final test that we want to do here is the main discovery of this video is that ally protection amounts can be reduced by the damage reduction passives such as Norog and Venomage. So in my setup here, I've got Physics as our ally protector. I've got Venomage, which is the new champion that reduces damage by 15% if they're under heal reduction. We've got Norog's passive, which is 15% when the ally protection buff is up. And then we've got Bisto in here again. So let's just look at the way that this works now. So looking at the math here, we've got additional calculations down here. So again, if we were expecting no impact from the Norog passives, we would be seeing 3,403 every time. If we were to see a reduction of one passive, it would be 2892, and if both passives were included, it would be 2458. Therefore, if we were to consider just the concept of, well, I've got two champions with damage reduction, we should be seeing 2458. It's not 100% as simple. It is based on team order, as we will see here. So in this current setup, my damage reduction champions are first in the team order compared to Bistofus. Under our hypothesis, this means that the ally protection damage will be reduced. So let's give this a test. So we will just fire out some abilities. So just fire out some abilities here, put out ally protect. So let's just throw out our heal reduction. So I'll make sure everyone gets it. So we had a resist and a resist. So these two will do extra damage, and then we will just throw out an A1 here. So again, we should be looking at 3403. So we're getting 2459, which is the number that we were expecting to receive for double protection. So currently the ally protection number is being reduced. But notice how that number for that Drake was higher, and that's because the heal reduction wasn't on. So let's run the same test now, but move Bistofus up into team order so that he is ahead of the damage reduction. So in this instance, both damage reduction are behind the champion receiving damage. So we'll just cycle through our abilities again, put our ally protection, throw out the heal reduction, and throw out an A1. So what is the ally protection taking now? It's going to be a critical hit. Can we get a non-critical hit? 3403. So what does this actually mean? If Bistofus is not in position 4 and the damage reduction champions are not ahead of him, your ally protector is essentially taking 30%, or more accurately 15 and 15%, because it's multiplicative, more damage than they need to. So if you put your team combination as Vizix, Bistofus, Venomage, Venomage, you're taking more damage. If you put it Vizix, Venomage, Norog, Bistofus, you're taking less damage. Now, if the attack was programmed to be on Venomage, Venomage being the final champion without Bistofus, and was after Norog, Venomage would gain both the reduction from her own kit and Norog. But if Venomage was ahead and Venomage was the one attacked, Norog's ability is not considered. So the conclusion here is you need to make sure that you place your damage reductions as high as possible. So the question is, does this also apply to Stalwart and Artifact sets that reduce damage? Well, we've got on our abilities here, we've got Venomage in Stalwart, and we've also got a Neri in Stalwart in my abilities. So we're going to test this now. We're going to place a Neri in the final position to see if we would get the desired numbers. We're going to test it on Doom Tower Floor 1 and against the Elenarals in the spreadsheet. So again, we've extracted the attack out and we've times it with the multiplier for Elenaral. And we expect, based on Vizix's damage reduction, that the number that the champion with both Norog and Venomage passive and Stalwart, the Protector, will receive 1793. So let's give this a test now. So we will just configure this out. And we will bring Norog, or we'll go to Doom Tower Floor 1. And we'll bring in Vizix. We will bring in Venomage, Norog, and we will have Godseeker and Neri. So again, Godseeker Neri should take the damage here, as she is low HP here. So let's give this a test. So one thing to note in terms of the way that the damage is displayed on the screen, it normally is based on team order. So therefore, the person in the last position will be the last amount of damage that you see on the ally protector. So we'll just cycle some abilities here, put ally protection out, put this out here. Right, we should start seeing. So that's the single target. We're looking for Elenaral's damage to see whether this returns 1793. We'll just throw an A1 here. 1793. Obviously she died on that position. Let's just rerun this back to make sure that there is no chance that there was a change in any code. Just put out the debuffs here. We'll run the single target hits again. And 1793, that's what we're looking for, the final number. 1793. 1793. Perfect. So that confirms that Stalwart also will reduce the damage your ally protector takes. So Never's joined me now to discuss what the outcome of all our testing actually means in terms of the game, because as much as mathematics is fun for some of us, what we want to know is, does it change our decision making in game? So Never, what do you think of the outcome? Has it changed your perspective, the way you approach clan boss?
Yeah, 100%. So I'm actually building a non-unkillable clan boss team for the first time ever, well, for a while. And in doing so, I'm using ally protection and guardian sets to obviously keep myself alive for longer. So obviously team positioning is huge. I didn't have my guardian set in second position.
Okay.
I definitely will do now.
Yeah.
And also it's kind of shined a light on how key and how impactful multiple guardian sets are. Obviously knowing that we can reduce the damage coming on our ally protection is massive.
Yeah.
And it's gonna be huge for anybody who's trying to build a team like that. Not
Yeah,
just for Clan Boss though, obviously for arena defense teams or just general surviving. If you're struggling to keep yourself alive in any content and you're using an ally protection champion, then there's so many things that you can do to really maximize that potential.
yeah, exactly. And I think what really kind of comes to my mind is the default desire for an unkillable comp, like a Bat Eater,
Yeah,
is not as default as it was a month ago now.
yeah.
Champions like
Well,
Taragi the Frog, which would have been an epic that some people might have looked at when it first came out and went, does ally protect? It's probably good for faction wars. Now
yeah,
is number one potentially for these types of comps.
yeah, absolutely. And as well as that, obviously, not everybody's fortunate enough to pull two man eaters. I know the pain.
Yes, that's a painful
So
topic.
yeah, it is a bit of a sore one.
Exactly.
But I mean, building a team like this has already got me on the verge of one key where I've been heavily two keying for 8 months
Right.
with a single man eater team. Um,
Exactly.
so obviously, I know my tune's currently a little bit not working, but it's going to be working very soon.
Cool.
Um, and obviously, throwing more Guardian sets into that's going to be huge.
Excellent. Well, I think that's going to wrap it up for this video. I know it's a bit of a long video. We'll try and bookmark each step for everyone. But yeah, the next video we're going to do is probably a more in-depth analysis between multiple Guardian sets versus Stalwart, and at what point does one beat the other, and just trying to further understand the protection mechanic when it comes to artifact sets.
Yeah,
So that should be in a couple of weeks' time. Look out for that. And thanks, Never. And we'll
no
finish there.
problem. And obviously, hopefully, what's been explained today will help everybody to push further in their clan boss or general content, like I said.